Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back ahead of a big week for Tottenham Hotspur. Big week. Joining me, I've got my co-host alongside me in Jason McGovern, and we'd like to welcome back to this show. The last time Jason was on with this gentleman, he was at a book launch, which tells you how long ago it's been. So we've got these two very wise men back together at a time when the fan base needs some reassurance, some calming. I'm delighted to welcome alongside me firstly, Jace. Thank you so much for stepping back up. How are you, my man? You okay?
I don't know about calmness, mate. I've been watching the cricket all day, so my blood temperature's gone through the roof watching England. In fact, in football terms, we've been 3-0 up twice in this match and tossed it away both times. So I don't know about calmness today. I'm ready to smash the TV to pieces at times, I think.
Do you mean to tell me that me bringing you on into about Tottenham, you're actually going to be calmer than watching the cricket? I can't believe that. What's going on?
It's calmer tonight. God, 70 odd for 6. Yeah, ridiculous.
Where do I start from there? Another huge avid cricket fan we've got to learn in the green room, I've got to say. We've got wonderful chief sports writer for The Sun, the brilliant Martin. Lipton returns. Martin, always lovely feedback whenever you're on the show. How are you? Thank you so much for giving us your time.
I'm very well. I'm sort of just back from my little break post Euros and Olympics, so it's been a fairly frantic summer. Obviously, the devastating blow of West Side losing 4-2 to Walcountians in the under-15 Surrey Youth League Premier Elite this afternoon was a devastating blow, and we've got to chin up and go on for the rest of the season because it's going to be a good season anyhow. No, I'm looking forward to this chat for the next hour and a half or so, and I'm also looking forward actually to the next 9 months. I think it's going to be more positive than some people think it's going to be, but that's up to a certain group of individuals to make it the case.
Absolutely. I think that's always the intriguing thing about Tottenham and the different guests that we get on this show, that for many, there's still a lot, of course, of optimism. We're only 3 games in. There's still, of course, the season to play out. I know for some, there is an air of trepidation of what's to come. But, I mean, the intrigue, of course, is Ange Postecoglou in that second season, like he tells us. It's always an exciting one. And I think, like I say, when we come, obviously, out to the international break now, Spurs have got a huge couple of games and what's to come, where many may feel it's the yardstick to what to judge Spurs on. But there's no doubt about it that I think we all go into the international break really much frustrated that Spurs haven't really come out of it with maximum points, because I think the performances definitely have warranted that. And I think that's probably where I do want to start, Martin, if you don't mind, and Jason will come on the back of that, is that it has been a mixed start to the season for Spurs. One that I think for many, as I said, to use that word frustration, has definitely been absolutely key, because when you look at the fact Spurs have taken 48 shots in their first 3 games of the Premier League season, and according to Opta, more than any other team apart from Nottingham Forest. They rank 1 behind Forest for shots on target with 20. For the second time in 3 games, Spurs dominated for over an hour or so, switched off momentarily, and unfortunately didn't take their chances, which results in the fact that we go in now and come out of the international break with 4 points out of a possible 9. How do you reflect, Martin, on the opening 3 games for you as a Spurs fan?
They've actually played better at the start of this season than they did at the start of last season when they had more points. But it's about basics, isn't it? You know, you've got to take your chances, which they did at the start of last season, and you've got to not concede soft goals. And we've conceded too many soft goals. 2 of the 3 goals that have been conceded have been entirely preventable. The Leicester goal was a poor goal, and the winning goal against for Newcastle, that is just not acceptable. There's no pressure on the ball. It's a simple ball. The runner's not been tracked. Just bad defending. That's Sunday morning defending, and you'll be giving your centre half and your fullback a load of grief if it happens. You know, you'll be talking to your pressing midfielder and asking him why he hasn't done his job. There's no way they should score from that position. They hadn't done anything to cut us open. But even then, even when Tottenham were dominating the game, and there were still 2 big occasions when Newcastle get in behind through nothing, because the defence hasn't done its job properly. And that is a frustration, because you can't afford to do that, because people are going to work out that weakness. That high line is all well and good when you've got pace. When you haven't got pace, maybe you have to think about dropping off 5 yards, or pressure the ball to ensure that they play the ball earlier, so it doesn't matter whether you've got the high line. If you give them time to pick a pass, they will go through you. Any team will. They're Premier League players you're playing against. They're not numpties. So you've got to force the issue and make them play the ball earlier than they want to.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I mean, Jason, you're also quite philosophical about the start to this season. You know, you look at the fact, I think if we're one thing we are lacking is almost that killer instinct. I think not having Solanke 2 out of those 3 games, we have a striker in the box. It may very well be a different type of season for Spurs in the opening 3 games. Is that all that it's down to? What have you made of the opening 3 for you? Should we feel disappointed that we haven't got more points on the board going into this crucial week coming up?
Yeah, I definitely think we should be sitting there with 9 points. We might well have had more shots than anyone, but for me, it's the number of shots we haven't had through a couple of games with no strikers. I mean, 2 or 3 balls pinged across the face of Newcastle's box that nobody got on the end of. So there's 3 or 4 extra shots there. So we got to be much better in the opposition's box in 2 of those games. But also, the repeated failures, defensively, we are so open and easy to score against. And I mean, as Martin says, at some stage in 90 minutes, any Premier League team's gonna find your gaps and exploit you. And it's the quality of our defending. We keep talking about those back 4 being. We wouldn't want to swap any of those 4. But be it as a unit, be it as a structure of a team, we are still way too easy to score against. And it is something that, that if Newcastle and Leicester and that have been able to pick us off, and Everton did nothing at all, but you do worry about the quality in the league. I'm not even talking about the top teams. I'm talking about West Ham have got quality in their side. Aston Villa's have got quality. There's plenty of teams. Crystal Palace have got quality in their side. So, there's lots of teams with qualities beyond Manchester City, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool's that can hurt you. And then we've until that structure's right, we are very vulnerable to counter attacks. And until we start putting the ball in the back of the net, then results are going to be hard to come by.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you guys have said, to kind of open up here, it's been a strange start to season because I think ultimately when you look at the performances, they've given us much promise without really the results at this stage. And I think when you look back at the fact, he's the first Spurs head coach, Ange Postecoglou, to almost in a half a decade have the chance to rebuild Spurs, which I know many get frustrated by that word, rebuild, and, reset the club in the nature that we saw in terms of the transfer window and the amount of players that we saw go out of the football club. I just want to ask you, Martin, you mentioned there in your opening piece about the defending and just how poor it's been in the nature of the goals we've conceded. The one thing definitely for me that I've had some concerns over is that it just feels that one moment of switching off, one ball in behind, and we look so susceptible to that. And it almost falls down like a pack of cards in terms of the system that we are trying to play. Do you think, having seen this now for over 12 months, a bit more than that under Ange, that you look at this style of play that he wants to play, is that sustainable with the group of players that he's got at his disposal at the moment for you?
Yes, but you just got to make sure you don't make the mistakes. I still think that of all the defensive midfielders we've got, Bentancur is the best. And I would rather have him in the team than Bissouma. I think he covers more ground. I think he's more talented. I think he can hurt teams with the ball as well. But more importantly, he's got that in him to be that screen. If the screen doesn't work, you're always going to be vulnerable. And the screen with Bissouma, I think he plays well at times, but he's not in the right position for me. Look, I'm not an expert. I don't know. The manager knows far more than I do. But looking at it, you think he's not doing his job enough there. And I don't. We all basically want to find a clone of Dembele. That's the ultimate, isn't it? And that's not that easy because he was a special player. But someone who can just give that structure in the defensive midfield position to make everyone feel more comfortable. And I think Bentancur is the most capable of that at the moment. It may be down the line that Gray becomes that player, but not yet. He's too young. You can't expect him. He might play the odd game there, but he's not going to be him who's going to be there. So it is a bit of a high wire at watching Tottenham at the moment, and that's in many ways that's good. That it's exciting and it's entertaining football. But if you keep on conceding goals, you start losing faith in yourselves as players as well. And I think that this is why there needs to be a degree of cohesion. Look, I think they've been so far better defensively at set pieces than last season. Not been great, but better. They haven't been too many. Everton had a couple of half chances. Newcastle didn't get anything really. There were good balls in the box that didn't fall because we were actually defending it relatively much better than last season. in terms of the position. That's been an improvement. But if you play poorly, you're going to get beaten, and it's as simple as that. And then the onus, then, if you're going to concede goals, which is pretty likely most games, you've got to be scoring. And that means when the ball gets whipped across the box, there's got to be a centre forward there and not a left winger playing at centre forward. And that's what we had at Newcastle. There were enough balls went across the box, particularly from Johnson in the second half. They should be goals. There's one where the defender somehow inadvertently puts it past his own post. If there's a centre forward there, it goes into his own goal because he's under pressure. Either the centre forward gets the touch or the defender puts it into his own net. There wasn't a centre forward putting him under pressure because that isn't Son's best position. He's playing at 9, but he's not a 9. He's a wide player who can cause you all sorts of problems. And occasionally, you play 1 or 2 games, you might get away with it. But over more than that, you're going to struggle, as we saw last season. Now, they bought a centre forward. They spent 60 odd million quid on him. He is a box threat. He's a goal scorer. He saw that last season. He's got to score goals. Now, against Leicester, he didn't score the goals, but he was hitting the target. I think that's the positive, is he was hitting the target. If you don't hit the target, you can't score. You've got to refine that. You've got to be better. There needs to be a more clinical edge to that team. If you're creating that many opportunities, you've got to find the back of the net. And if you don't, you're going to be mid-table. It isn't rocket science. You've got to be able to score goals. If you're going to get top 4, top 5, you're going to need at least 70 goals, 65 to 70 goals. If you're conceding 40 goals, you definitely need 75 goals.
Yep.
So the likelihood is we're probably going to concede. If Spurs went the season conceding 45 goals, I think they've done well, given the way they defend. So they're going to have to score 30 more goals than that to win games.
It's fascinating you say that, because I think, Jace, we've had the discussion off air a lot of times with me and you over the WhatsApp as well, that, it doesn't feel that there's a real almost imperative nature of keeping clean sheets. It almost feels like, we are going to concede 2 every game. Can we score 3 or 4? And I just wonder, Jace, for you, look, you've seen off a lot of managers, you've seen a lot of teams, not to age you both at all. When you look at this, Jace, for you, the style of play, do you look and think, this is sustainable, we can outscore other teams? Or do you think at some point, when I look at all the great successful teams growing up, all those teams that I watched were all built on solid foundations. They had great defences that lent into midfield and lent into attack. Can, for you, this work under its current format in terms of the players that we've got, in the way Ange wants to play? What's your gut telling you, Jace? You've seen a lot of football. You're normally right when it comes to managers, the way they want to play. What's your gut telling you when you see the team and the way we want to play?
Well, number one, I don't want to see the way we play change too much. You know what I'm like. It's got to be attacking football and things. I think at Celtic, maybe, Celtic had the advantage of perhaps having the best players in the league. And therefore, if you've got the best players in the league, it helps you do it. Now, if you've got Haaland up front and Rodri in midfield, then maybe this works a lot more successfully than I fear it does. I look at it, and I mean, Martin's right. I'm not sure. The 3 games we've seen, we've basically had one player in, sitting in front of the back 4, whether it was Bentancur against Leicester, and then it was Bissouma in the other 2 games, partly because of injuries and suspensions or self-inflicted suspensions and things like that. So we don't know for sure that's how he would have set those 3 games up if everyone was available. But I fear that Bissouma hasn't got the discipline to be on his own in that area of the pitch. And I fear that Bentancur hasn't quite got the mobility since injury to be on his own in that area on the pitch. So maybe you can still have your 2 fullbacks bombing on, but I do fear or feel that you kind of need 2 people in the centre of midfield to try and give you that control because of the players we've got there. Like I say, if you've got a Rodri in there, then maybe you can get away with 1. But my feeling is at the moment, the way the players we've got available, you might need that second body in there that's not charging forward at every opportunity. And therefore, if you've got Bissouma and Bentancur, then maybe you get to Joe Linton that little bit quicker or that little bit easier, and you do stop 1 or 2 through balls. So that might be the tweak that I fear he has to make. And we said all summer, didn't we? We'd have loved that real out and out number 6 that can do that job. And I just feel that the two we've got aren't quite good enough to do it on their own. They're good players, but on their own, it's difficult for them.
I mean, let me ask you, Martin. Jason mentions there about, a number 6 and what maybe Spurs could have done in the summer transfer window. And what Spurs did do, just to be clear, is they spent over 125 million. 42 million of that was in sales. There was 5 players in, 9 players out for good. We'll wait to see what happens with Sergio Reguilon in these coming days. The wage bill went down by 32 million. Spurs' average age of the squad now stands at 25. I mean, it was another busy window to some degree in terms of activity coming in. Solanke, of course, arriving from Bournemouth for that club record £65 million fee. As we know, wasn't available for the Everton and the trip to St James's Park, respectively. Did make his debut, of course, in that 1-1 draw against Leicester. There were the lights, of course, coming in of the likes of Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Wilson Odobert, all arrived with South Korean youngster Yan Min-hyuk to join the squad in January. I have to ask you, Martin, bearing in mind, this is the manager that claims in his second season he usually wins. We've had the likes of Romero, Mickey van der Ven coming out saying that they want to win silverware with Tottenham. What do you make of the window Spurs have had? I know there's a lot of feeling that maybe Spurs are building a squad for the post-Pep Guardiola era. Do you look at the signings Spurs have made and feel they're any closer to the likes of City, Liverpool, Arsenal at this stage?
Honestly, no. But they're no further. They're certainly not further away. I think there's a squad. The squad is bigger now of players you can play. I thought even last year you're down to 14, 15 players, and at times not even that. So I think there's more options now. I think last season we were one game changed everything. That Chelsea game. It wasn't the defeat. It was the fact that we lost Romero and Van der Ven and Udogie and Maddison for different lengths of time as an immediate consequence. And that was a massive blow. And it took for most of the season to recover. And I don't think ever recovered from that, actually. So I think now, look, we've got an option at centre-half in the Romanian boy, who I think did all right at Newcastle. I think he's a player. I watched him a couple of times in the Euros, and he's not the answer to every question, but he's an answer to more questions than what there was before. And I think that's quite positive. We desperately, though, need Van der Ven to be back fit, and we don't know the extent of that injury. He got it, from the sound of it was one he got right in the very depth of that Everton game, not the one we went down for, but a subsequent injury. But sometimes they play on through injury, and then the reality comes to the fore. We haven't got a left-back cover, which is a bit disconcerting. So it looks like Davis will have to play left-back if Udogie's injured. Particularly, I mean, Van der Ven could play left-back, as he did at the end of last season, actually quite well. But then you have to play Dragusin at centre-half. So there's all these issues. I think there seems to be more. What the best thing about the window for me was getting rid of the deadwood players who were never going to have a future at Tottenham and needed, for whatever, some because they were always injured, some because they just simply weren't good enough, some because their heart wasn't in it. You can draw your own conclusions about who I'm talking in which category, but I was not upset for 1 second to see Brian Hill leave the club. I wasn't upset to see Lo Celso leave the club. I wasn't upset because he's never played for us to see the boy they got from Fulham leave the
Solomon.
club.
Yeah, Solomon. Yep.
No, not him. And then the other boy, the fullback from Fulham, whose name escapes me for the moment. He was there for all those years. He's got a couple of goals. Scored one against Bayern Munich. Scored one against Southampton.
Yeah, Sessegnon.
Yep. He was never fit. He was never fit. Skip. It was time to move on. He wasn't ever going to be. Skip can't question his attitude, his determination, his desire, but he's not good enough to play at the level that the club wants to be at. Yeah. So getting rid of the ones who went was actually quite a good bit of, Emerson again. You've got absolutely all you're going to get out of him, and let's say thanks very much. He was game. He could be okay in a defensive role at right back. He couldn't do anything else, and
I'm interested to know, Martin, if someone told you before that was going to be Tottenham's transfer window, is that something you would have expected? Or is it a case that now looking back and what we've done, you've been okay? I mean, I'm really intrigued to know that.
It's not an unusual way of doing things. Look, I think they like the idea of trying to bring in young players. So Bergvall's one, obviously. Gray's another. who are players for the future, but need to be players for now, given how many games the club's going to play this season. You know, last season was 41 games, 42 games. This season is going to be 55 games or more. If you get a couple of domestic runs, cup runs, it could be 60 odd games, because you know you've got a guarantee of 8 games in Europe. I would imagine there'll be another 4. You'd hope there'd be another 4 at least to get to the last 8 of that competition. It's one they should be looking to win, in truth, given the other teams that are in it. So you're playing a lot more football, and you need to have more players. And I think players those games against the likes of Carabao and the other poorer teams that we're going to play, the first 2 European games, they're games that you should be looking to blood the kids.
Yeah. Yep.
Give them some game time. We're playing teams we should be. Elfsborg and Carabao and AZ Alkmaar, they're not good teams. They're teams we should be beating. We should be winning all 4 of those home matches. We should be winning at least 2 of the away matches. We should be guaranteed to go through comfortably in the top 8, because that's what it's about. Then you don't play in those 2 games in February. You get a bit of space to play other domestic games as well. Things like that you've got to think about. But I think overall, Odegaard, we've seen a bit of him, still very young again. I thought it was interesting to watch him against Everton. Newcastle, he looked quite callow. His decision making wasn't good enough. And I know that loads of people give Johnson grief. I thought Johnson did really well when he came on at Newcastle. I thought he caused them lots of problems. He's created 1 goal. He's created other chances as well. I know his final ball's not always great. If he's rolling that ball across the box, I'm happy with that. If he's play that's the ball I want him to play, because that's where your centre forward should be getting on the end of, or the opposition winger should be getting on the end of. That ball across the box is the ball, because no defender wants to have to deal with that, because he's often facing his own goal, or half facing his own goal, and it's own goals get scored from things like that. So that delivery is what we do want from him. Kulusevski, I thought his decision making was poor against Newcastle. There were 2 or 3 occasions when he had to play the right ball in and he didn't. One was towards the end. Johnson's overlapping on the right. That's the ball, and he opts for a ball to Werner, which even if the ball comes off, he's not going to get a shot away. There's too many players around him. If you play the ball into Johnson, at least he's got the option then of driving on, crossing, shooting, whatever. You've got to make those decisions, and that's the frustration. I thought, look at the game against Everton, who are not a good team. Let's be honest. Yep. They are a poor side, and they've been circling the plug hole for a very long time, and this time they might go down it. They really are not very good. And he did well against Everton, but they all did, because Everton aren't very good. But Everton had a couple of chances as well, at 1-0 and 2-0, where we could have conceded in that game. So lots of it's positive, but I'm not going to go jumping through hoops, because clearly there are elements that need to be addressed. And I think they will be. I think that if I'm buying futures in teams this season, I'm certainly buying Spurs rather than Newcastle, because I think they'll be, having seen the 2 teams last week, and also the other Newcastle game, Spurs are much better than Newcastle. Much better. And Newcastle will be better this year than they were last year, because they haven't got Europe, haven't got Champions League. Villa, I think, will pay the price of playing Champions League, because it really takes its toll on you when you play, particularly now you've got to play 8 games in the group rather than 6. So all of that, and as we know, because there's only 7 English teams in Europe this year, and the nations with 8, Germany and Italy, their 7th and 8th teams are weaker than the 7th teams were last year. It's more likely that the 5th team in the Premier League will get the extra Champions League spot, just because of the way the coefficient system that's used. Also, if you look at the 7 teams we've got in Europe, Chelsea should win their competition. City, Arsenal, Liverpool are all going to go quite close. They're all going to go deep in the Champions League. Villa, I think, will get to the last 16, maybe even the last 8. Spurs and United should play in the final. Or you could look at Roma and Eintracht Frankfurt as potential rivals, but Spurs and United are the 2 best teams in that competition. That doesn't mean that they'll get to the final, but they're the 2 best teams in the competition. So England's coefficient should be absolutely sky high, which means 5th place gets in the Champions League.
Yeah. Jace, I know you thought you maybe got away with it when you wasn't on the window review show. And I'll let Jace
I
go.
remember thinking, I remember thinking exactly the same last year. Liverpool win the Europa League, got knocked out by Atalanta.
Oh, yeah.
Villa win the Conference League, got knocked out by, what was it, Olympiacos.
Yeah.
Arsenal, Manchester City, somebody else, Man United, all out the Champions League by the, what was it, Man United didn't even get out of the group.
Man United and Newcastle both got, but if United and Newcastle go through,
Newcastle didn't get out of the group, didn't even get
then
into
we
the
get
Europa
fifth.
League because they finished bottom of the group. Just everything, and Tottenham finished fifth. So just as, you know, with fifth wasn't good enough, just like fourth wasn't good enough for us.
Well, that's
unbelievable.
How about just finish fourth and then not worry about it? That's the easiest answer.
How about we win the league? Then we don't have to worry about anything.
That'd be perfect. Jason, I know you thought you got away with it. You wasn't on our window review show, but just I want to ask you, when you look at the business Spurs have done, what do you feel the ambition is on the base of the window we've just had? I know you despise the transfer window. No, you can't stand it. I think I've become now around to your ways that for me, I would be in favour of once again it shutting before the start of the season. I think it just causes hysterical feedback, hysterical reaction when it's open and there's games going on. But on reflection, when you look at the business Spurs have done, Jace, in your mind, what do you feel the ambition is now for the club, given the window they've just had?
First on the window, I liked pretty much everything we did in the window, with the exception, I think we, you know, the Timo Werner thing does leave you a little bit baffled how early we committed ourselves to that deal. Could we have got a better deal leaving it later in the window? And there, you know, there's the argument, isn't it? Spurs fans always want the business done early in the window, and here we are saying there's a prime example. You jump early in the window, and did we get the best deal that we could have done? And if we'd have left it till lastminute.com, which we might well have come up with a better solution. But apart from that, like Martin said, all the deadwood we got rid of, you know, including paying off and Dombele's, you know, Jaffet Tangat, people that had no future at the club, all going out. And the rest of the players that have come in, you know, it's nice to see those players, the younger players come in. I just think it was perhaps the business that we didn't do, like a genuine number 6. I think a genuine backup goalkeeper that's between Vicario and Fraser Forster, one that's perhaps more suited to being able to use his feet or whatever. I remember Fraser Forster in that penalty shootout against Fulham was about as flexible as a lamppost, wasn't he? You know, didn't get anywhere near any of Fulham's kicks. And then the possibility of a genuine left-sided, you know, I mean, Arsenal brought in Calafiore. There's one, you know, that type of player that can play as a left-sided centre back like Mickey, or can play as a comfortable left back. So they're the roles that hopefully we plug those gaps. But the business we did, I was happy with. It was the business we didn't do that perhaps left us short. And you know, Ange's talking about he's made a rod for his own back by saying he wants to win. And like Martin says, I don't think the business we've done in the window puts us closer to the top 3 or top 4. And it's not just, you know, it's not just the top 4 in terms of Premier League. Like I've said, when you look at the last, you know, in the era of the 2000s, I think Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Man City have won something like 87% of the domestic trophies. So, you know, it's not just about being closer to them in the top 4. I've always said it. You're going to have to win a League Cup. You're going to have to beat one, probably 2 of them. To win an FA Cup, you're going to have to beat one, probably 2 of them. Even in the Europa League this year, you've still got Man United in there that you've got to get past. So, you know, you've got to bridge that gap, and I'm not so sure the business we've done gives us the best opportunity to bridge that. But we'll see. We'll see.
Would you describe it just as a missed opportunity?
I don't know about missed, because I thought the gap between us and those clubs was a huge gap anyway last year. And I mean, how many points were we behind the top 3 in the end? You know, I've always felt that we needed
26 and 23. I can tell you those gaps were
20 odd points. So I thought if you gave us an extra 12 points, you still needed 8 or 9 points to come back in our direction. So I don't think it was ever possible for Tottenham to bridge that gap on their own. but I would have liked to have seen us where I felt like we've got a team that's capable of getting into the 80s, if you like, 80, 81 point. I think, what did we get last year? 68. I think if you said to me, get an extra 12, 13 points this year, that's a sign of progress in terms of our league position. And you're definitely within the top four if you've got 80 points on the board, but you're still not winning the league on 80 points, are you? So it's as simple as that. But like I say, those other clubs are still going to be in those domestic cups, and 87% of the domestic cups have been won by those four clubs in the last.
Most of them won by City, haven't they? I mean, that's
yeah, I mean, well, Arsenal have won how many FA Cups in that time?
Yeah.
Man United have still won 2 trophies in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
For all the flack that they've got. So, what were the cup finals last year? Man United v Man City, Liverpool v Chelsea.
Yep.
So, if Liverpool don't win it, Chelsea do. If Man City don't win it, Man United do. It just shows you the level you've got to do to even win a domestic cup. So there's your struggles.
It's fascinating because, again, I mean, that always comes up again at the end of a window, Martin. Has the manager been backed? I mean, Ange has publicly said in numerous press conferences that he's happy. He's happy with the window. They had a strategy going into it. Admittedly, it can change in terms of the players that are available, but he quantified that and reassured us again after the window was about to close that he's fairly happy with what he's got. Do you believe that? Do you believe that he's been backed accordingly with the players he would have wanted for you?
Well, I think he's strong enough in himself to say if he hasn't been, and he didn't, which tells me that he's on the same page as the board when it comes to that. I get absolutely what Jason says about getting a number 6. Go on then. Who's the number 6? There ain't that many. That's it. If you can go and buy Rodri tomorrow, brilliant. But I don't think City are going to let him go. Mind you, at the end of the season, they might not have any option of letting him go. But that's another matter. But realistically, there aren't too many. So I would have liked a proper left back brought in. I think that's the obvious glaring deficiency for me, that we haven't brought in an option to play left back if Udogie gets injured or suspended, who isn't Ben Davies. And that is not in any way to decry Ben Davies. It isn't. But let's be fair, he's coming to the tail end of his career. And I think I wouldn't be shocked to find him as a future Tottenham manager, in truth. We'll do Swansea and then Spurs. They'll be his 2 clubs. And he'll do Wales at some point as well, because he speaks Welsh. So he do the interviews for S4C. But you don't want him to be the only option at left back if Udogie's injured, and that realistically at the moment is what he is. Because I don't think you want to really play Spence out of position. If you don't trust Spence enough to be in the Europa League squad, you don't want him to be your left back. Because if you thought he was good enough to be left back, you'd have him in the Europa League squad. And that's I think he's done okay when the few minutes we've seen of him pre-season. He looked quite good. But he's obviously still got an awful lot to prove to the manager and the coaching staff about attitude more than anything else. I think adaptability, maturity, all of these things. These are big issues. You want your players to be able to cope under pressure, and you don't know sometimes if they can or not. And this is when you see when they're under pressure. And there's a few of them we've seen over the last few years who couldn't cope under pressure, and most of them are no longer at the club. So that's a positive. What I see of Gray already, I think he can be a very good player going forward. He's clearly mature beyond his years. He's versatile. He's going to be involved. He's not. Likewise, Bergvall will be looking to take Maddison's place in the team within 18 months. That's unquestioned, and that's good. Doesn't mean he'll take it, and it will mean that Maddison knows he's got to perform. And I think this season, he looks fitter, Maddison. I think he's been better this season than he was at any point after he came back from the injury last year. He knows he wasn't fit. He came back. He tried too hard to get back too quick. And when you do that, as Bentancur did last season, you're actually less effective and less useful than you would be if, frustrating as it is, you waited until you were ready to come back. And I understand they want to play. It's absolutely right they want to play.
Yep.
But sometimes they come back and they're coming back too early, because you've got to be so perfectly physical shape to play Premier League football, because you're going to be kicked to bits anyhow. So every player is playing with injury. But if you come back with an injury and then get your kick, The injuries never healed. You need that time. Now, it looked to me this season so far that Maddison, after the first game, he got sharper and sharper against Newcastle. I thought he played very well. And if England, if Spurs win that game, everyone's talking about Maddison being back again because he was playing really well. So you've got to be a bit more, bit less judgmental of things, I think, at such an early stage in the season. If you get to November and it's still much of a muchness, then you can start asking questions. But we've had 3 matches.
Yep.
It's the first, international break, which is always disruptive. Let's see where we are. Even in a month's time, at the second in the October international break, when we've played 5 more games, we'll have a much better idea of where the team is, where the club is, what sort of squad there is involved this season. I think
that's fair. I mean, final one, Jason, before we veer away from the window. I know many were frustrated amongst the Spurs fan base that we didn't bring in that term marquee statement signing. There were a lot of links in the early part of the summer that Spurs have been linked to an Eze or a Neto. I mean, it doesn't appear that this manager particularly wants a statement, egotistical. I'm not saying those players are, but he doesn't really want that. It seems like he does want to go with more of a younger, more of an unknown approach in the market. I mean, I know that you're one of these fans that very much says, if we're going to back the manager, we have to let the manager decide who he wants. And it might not be an Eze, it might not be a Neto, it might not be a Pelina. I mean, how important is that for you that, maybe we didn't sign the player the fans wanted, but maybe we signed the player just that the manager wanted, Jace?
Well, that to me is the thing about a statement signing. It's a statement for who? It wasn't Solanke at 65 million a statement signing. He chose to spend 65 million on Solanke rather than 65 million on Eze. We probably needed Solanke a little bit more than Eze. That's not to say I wouldn't have taken Eze, but I can't believe that Solanke at 65 million is not classed as a statement signing. Neto for me was as good as Neto is. I never wanted Neto because of the injury record is horrific, really is. The irony is we signed Solanke and he then immediately misses 2 games just at the time that Richarlison continues to miss games, just the time where Will Lancashire gets upgraded to a first team squad, he gets an injury. I mean, it is just perhaps that's a problem for Tottenham. It didn't. Perhaps if Neto was in, we'd have had a broken leg of him in training or something already, and he'd have never pinged an hamstring. But I think the term back in. It's very difficult to know because, Ange Postecoglou, I don't remember reading out on a list in a press conference of all the players he wanted. There are so many permutations within that, we don't know what the budget is, whether the budget's the right budget. We don't know what the wage budget is. So, was he backed according to the terms that Tottenham gave him, of which he's agreed to, or was he backed to go and be, to go and spend like Chelsea have gone and spent? It's difficult to know. I think he's happy with the players that came in. Probably like every single manager in the Premier League, he'd have liked 1 or 2 more. But I wouldn't mind betting if you said to Pep, "Would you want 1 or 2 more?" Even he'd say, "I want them." So, was Arne Slot backed because they only brought in 1 player? I think Liverpool.
Yeah.
I bet Arteta would still like more. Even then, I bet he's still thinking, I know that, but I wouldn't mind having a proper out-and-out striker. So how do we know who's backed and who isn't? The fact of the matter is the window's closed. You just have to get on with what you've got now until January. And, all the other bits and pieces that you need to go your way, like injuries, like suspensions and things, particularly to key players. And then we revisit it in January, mate.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What we are going to do, we are going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. We've got over 2,500 of you watching us live, as always. Thank you so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. I hope these guys don't mind. We're joined by 2 very wise men that have seen a lot of Spurs in their lifetime. Look at them, they are. And before I do, Jason's desperate to come back in. Please come back in for a Jace.
Yeah, well, just when you was talking about Djed, Spence, for me personally, for Europe, I would have left Maddison out at the group stage of this league stage. Because when you look at it, you've got to finish in the top 24 of 36 teams. That's it. Yes, you have to. If you go in the top 8, you don't have to play the playoff round. But the worst possible scenario is you've got to finish in the top 24 of, what is it, 36 teams, and surely capable. I think to finish in the top 24, you're talking about probably 10, 11 points would get you in the
less than
top
that. I reckon 8 will
24.
get you through. I reckon
Yeah,
2
so
wins
you're,
and
you're
2
talking
draws will
about
get you through.
3 wins out of 8 games. You should at least go into the playoff round. So for me, I think particularly the way Maddison plays, where he does constantly get whacked on the ankles and that. I think you've seen Chelsea leave Cole Palmer out of their squad for almost for the same reason. Why take the risk? I think it would have given Bergvall the opportunity to play some European games. There's enough players in midfield with Sarr, with Bergvall, with Gray, with Bentancur, with Bissouma. Kulusevski can play as a 10 as well. I just thought I might have left. Maddison would have been the one I'd have left out just to make sure he got those rests between games, and then you bring him in for the key games as in the second half of the tournament. But rather than leaving, because I think Djed Spence could rotate with Porro and give Porro a little bit of a rest and things like that then as well.
Well, look, we'll discuss that now because you brought it up, James. I mean, Martin, the key factor was we knew going into the submission of that, obviously, team or squad Spurs had to do. They had to make the decision as to whether to elect to maybe remove Fraser Forster from their squad list, or as the alternative being drop one of their, you'd say, senior squad members. Spurs decided to do that in removing Djed Spence from the list of what they were going to submit, and then obviously putting Fraser Forster in there, which maybe gives you an indication of where Ange Postecoglou sees the likes of Whiteman at the moment and Austin in terms of where he views them in their development, that he just doesn't feel they're ready and hence does need to have that backup in terms of Fraser Forster. And as Jason said, he may very well be playing games in this competition, Fraser Forster. But I just want to ask you about Djed Spence, because this is a guy that, when he came back to the club in pre-season, everyone was expecting Djed Spence to move on. We obviously knew he had the bid from Genoa sitting there. There was backwards and forwards at the time with negotiations. And in between that period, Spence really impressed for Spurs during pre-season. Ange admitted before the window closed that Spence has not been a moment's problem. If he had been, he would be nowhere near the first team squad and would have likely left the football club. Given the fact that we've seen a real reprieve for Spence and a turnaround in his Spurs career, I personally feel it's a real injustice for him that he's not going to feature in his competition, because I look at the Premier League and I don't see him getting over Udogie at the moment. I don't see him getting over Porro. Cup competitions, possibly. I presume he will probably play against Coventry, which we'll discuss coming up. But it's almost... And how do I put this with Spence? I feel like you're almost cutting off one of his limbs by not letting him have the opportunity to play in the Europa League, because where else is that guy going to get regular game time to show Ange Postecoglou that he's good enough to play in the first team? So can you understand fans that can't quite understand how Spence has been the man to have lost his place in this squad?
I can understand why people are asking the question. I think one of it is he's saying to Spence, yeah, you're in the squad for the Premier League, but you're behind this young kid I've signed from Leeds. He's my second right back. You've got to show me in training that you're better than Gray. Every day in every session, you've got to convince me I've made a mistake here. So go on then, you go and do that, because I've got an open book. I've said to you, you're in my squad, you're in my Premier League squad. I've played you, I think, in 2 of the first 3 games. You're involved. You're part of it. You've got to now show you're good enough to be part of it, because you're older than him and he's better than you at the moment. So you've got to go and prove me wrong. No, I don't have an issue with that, because that's what sometimes it's carrot and stick. You've got to have both, haven't you? I think if there was a better young goalkeeper who he could trust to play in goal in Europe, he wouldn't have done Forster. But you don't want to have to throw Whiteman or Austin in against Roma, do you? You can,
or Galatasaray away.
Yeah, exactly. What if Vicario gets injured? Then you do think you actually want the player who's played against Barcelona and against loads and played in lots of big games in his career to be the one who's in goal, even if he's not the greatest goalkeeper. But at least he's not going to freeze under the pressure and cause chaos. So there's a rationale behind that. I think I actually don't want Vicario to play very much in the Europa League. I think because he plays every game in the league. He's obviously
never present.
He should play every game.
Yep.
But part of the thing that people don't realise is that even travelling takes its toll on you. If you're a footballer, if you've got an away game, even if you're on the bench, you're away from home for 3 days. You're missing sleep. You're not able to. You're not resting. Even if you don't kick a ball, you do the training sessions, which are intensive. You've got all of that. You're watching the whole game in case you have to come on. That's not rest. It's just not playing. You're still involved. You're still working. And I think it's sometimes, some of those home games, you can say to Vicario, no, you're not even on the bench today. We're playing Quaverbag. We'll go with Foster in goal, Austin and Whiteman on the bench. You have a day off. I'll see you in training on Friday. Just to give him a chance. Give him a chance to have a break. He's been away with Italy for this international break. Not got a game. He's still training every day. He's still working every day. He's still watching the game in case the PSG keeper gets sent off and he has to go on. So he's not had any. So the international break for him's not been a break. So he comes back from that into the game on Sunday. These players we need to look after the players. I know they're on 50, 80, 100 and 200 and odd grand a week. That's an irrelevance. They're still human beings. They need to be, you wouldn't race a horse every day. You wouldn't race a greyhound every day. Yeah. Sometimes you've got to actually have some time off to eat in the field. Footballers need to eat in the field occasionally.
You know what I mean? On that point, we have to then reiterate the point. Spurs were in a situation where they had to pick two of the homegrowns, or the squad would have been cut to 21. Jace, you've already made your point very, very clear that if you had your way, it would be James Maddison out of that squad, in your opinion, and you would have given, like I said, an alternative player a chance. I mean, do you understand the frustration about the fact that Djed Spence has lost the opportunity to play any of those opening 9 games where that would have been an opportunity, I think, to really show the manager? And I get Martin's point, he's behind Gray at the moment, but by the fact that he's kept him, there is a little bit of, I'd say, a bit of bamboozlement from some of the fan base. Well, hold on, you've kept the guy, you want him part of your squad. Surely the Europa League would have been a perfect competition to some degree to bed him in, to give him an opportunity to show that he can then compete for a Premier League place. Whereas now, I mean, it just feels, obviously, the fact that he's going to be a backup to a Doggy, to Porro, really. If an injury comes along, he'll get his opportunity. And he's going to have to show him in that maybe half an hour, 25-minute window, that's his chance. Is that fair in your mind when it comes to Spence, given the fact that Ange decided to keep him? I just wonder what you think about the player's mindset now, given that he worked incredibly hard, from what we understand, behind the scenes to show Ange he wants to be part of this squad.
Well, I suppose it depends how it's been explained to him, doesn't it? If he's... he's a test. We know the problems that he's had in the past. So, from the outside, you think, right, it's another test of his mentality. Does he still come in, like Martin says, crack on with training, improve? Gray's obviously going to be the backup right back, but what's the long-term future for Gray? Is it as a right back? Is it as the number 6 as such? In which case, if Gray's the backup number 6, I'd still sooner see him in that role in the Europa League games, which is why I'd have gone with Spence. And like I say, I would have left Maddison out just to give Bergvall opportunities, or let Mikey Moore come in the game 7 and 8 against Elfsberg or whoever it is. So I think there was ways around it. But once you pick Fraser Foster, whoever you were going to leave out, there was going to be a problem. People saying, oh, you should have left Ben Davies out, but he covers, whether you like Ben Davies or not, it's cover for 2 positions. So we should have left this one out, or we should have left that one out. And I think that the problem would have been there for that. I mean, it's part of the problem as well, where you've got no senior homegrown players anymore. And in the last 12 months, we've lost Kane, Winks, Skip, and Japhet Tanganga. And I'm not regretting losing those players, but it is a problem that it does give you if you don't have senior homegrown players in there. That has got to be addressed, because if you do get in the Champions League next year, that's certainly an area we've got to think about, of not having what I call senior players as homegrowns, because usually one of them is a goalkeeper, but the 2 goalkeepers, if they're not trusted for Europa League football and neither of them have played a minute in the Premier League, they're not suddenly going to be Champions League goalkeepers in a year's time, are they? So Donnelly's out on loan, Alfie Devine's out on loan, but again, it was an opportunity maybe in the group stage of Europe to see the youngsters, but they've preferred to give them full-on game time at whatever level it is. I think Alfie Devine's gone to Westerlo, hasn't he, into the Belgian league. So it's something that you've got to start thinking about. If you do get Champions League football next year, where are our 4 senior playing homegrown players? We've got none.
Yeah, there's a
And
concern.
but that's a
Definitely.
long-term thing, isn't it? That
Yeah.
the reality is
Yeah.
the players who would have been,
Well,
who you would have
you
said
say it's
5
long
years
term,
ago.
but it's only 12 months.
Yeah, but I'm saying
It's only
it's
12
a
months.
long-term issue that's brought it here because the players weren't coming through for 3 or 4 years who were good enough. So the reality is, what you want is the Donnellys and Devines and Moores and Lancashires and Dorringtons, etc., when they're 22, to be good enough to be in that squad by right.
To play that role, yeah.
So that's now, Moore's only 70. Moore is a B-list player for 4 seasons. So he won't count in a European squad for 4 seasons, including this one.
Yeah,
he'll be a. I'm assuming, hopefully by then he's a starting left winger for England. We're talking about someone of that talent.
Yep.
So let's, there is that, and there's been a hiatus because we had that. We had the likes of Kane, who obviously was homegrown, and
Troy Parrott's another one, of course, that's gone on loan.
So
gone out.
The big players who were coming through didn't fill the void. So we've got to accept that. You can't change that now. They haven't been good enough. And it's not as if, well, they might have been good enough. Which ones have we let go that have made an impact? The only one is arguably Marcus Edwards. Has he really made an impact? No, not
really.
No. So the quality wasn't there. There were players who looked terrific players in that youth team for 2-3 years, have now been shipped out of the club because the next step up is so high. And it isn't easy to be a Premier League player, to play 2 years in the Premier League. You've got to be so good to be involved in the Premier League for 2 seasons, because you get found out so quickly. If you're a striking player, you have to reinvent yourself every 2 weeks. Otherwise, you're going to have 4 games, score 2 goals, never score again. It's really tough, to be good enough. You've got to be so talented, and we forget that sometimes. We just think, oh yeah, he ain't any good. He's just not as good as you need to be at that level. He's still unbelievably good, just not good enough because the level's so high.
It's so true. I mean, I just want to ask you, how do you feel that Ange will cope with regards to Europe and Premier League? Because I think that's the one thing that I think, any manager that's been here has always struggled with the balance of that from Thursday to Sunday, then into the following week, about how you get the right balance. How do you think Ange will be able to cope with that, given the fact that we've already discussed on this show that there is a concern about maybe the depth of the squad, especially at left back, the goalkeeping situation? Do you feel we can balance this out enough between now and get through to January? I'm not saying we're absolutely, with a lack of complete utter depth, but what I'm saying is that based on his options, can he rotate in the way he would like to between now and January, at least for you?
Well, I think he can get through to like I say, he's got to finish in the top 24 of 36 teams. So 3 wins, and you've done that, I think. 3 wins, 4 wins, if you like. Win 3 of your home games and 1 of the away games. You should be all right to do that. So he should be there. It remains to be seen how we go about the Europa League. I mean, one thing that's been a problem for us in Europa League and Conference League football is when you look at our away record, it's shocking in those competitions. Some of the teams that we've played against, like Mura, Lask, who was a team that we drew 3-3 with in a playoff round? Was it Wolfsberger of Austria or something like that? Then, we go to Vitesse. I think Vitesse lost 1-0 where we took 9 players. We even lost to, what was it, Pacos to Ferreira, 1-0 in a leg. So, our away form in Europe, away from the Champions, you don't mind going to Milan losing 1-0 or something like that. But our Europa games, be it Conference or Europa League, has been shocking. Now, if we do like we did in that Vitesse game, where you make 10 changes for Vitesse and you bring all the youngsters in, I think the big danger that there is in that, number one, you're not necessarily playing with much cohesion, but you're almost setting a mental level that it's a B-team competition, if you see what I mean. And those players already have. I think Ben Davies made the point. I think he played in that game in Vitesse. And I think he said that night or the following day or something. It's difficult when you know that all those changes are being made. You kind of think, well, we're not playing in the Premier League Saturday,
Yes,
and
yeah.
rather than giving them an invigoration and a push, it actually kind of did the reverse thing. So I think a bit like Carabao Cup with Coventry. I think it depends how many changes you make. If you make 4 or 5 changes, that's one thing. But if we start making 10 changes for Carabao, just Porro's got to be here and things like that, then you will ruin your away form and you will struggle through it. But you should still have enough, Rick, to get through in the top
Yeah, I do agree.
24 teams. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
I think the one thing the Europa League does offer you, Martin, I think we've seen this before under Pochettino as being one manager, that it does offer you an opportunity to really gain momentum quite good. Again, when you look at the teams that we face, if you can get those wins in the Europa League, it's quite a nice way of building something then into the Premier League in terms of form. I'm just intrigued to know, like Jason rattles off there some of the horrendous stats of our away form in Europe over these last recent years. How do you see him playing it, Martin? I think the one thing that Ange was heavily criticised for last season was the cups and the way Spurs went out of them. I mean, look, they faced Man City in the FA Cup, which is always going to be a tough game, don't get me wrong, but the nature of the Fulham exit, I know for some, still really hurts them. Coventry, of course, coming up, which we'll discuss shortly. But in terms of, for you, the European journey and how we'll take that, how seriously do you think he will take that, given the fact that he's made it very clear in his second season, he normally wins something?
Look, because you don't filter down from the Champions League anymore, it's a much easier competition to win. Because you know already who you're going to have to beat to win it. And the winner will come from that top seeding group of 9 teams. Probably 6 of the quarterfinalists will come from that top seeding group of 9 teams. So you know exactly who you're going to have to beat. Now look through that list of teams. Roma, Man United, Porto, Ajax, Rangers, Frankfurt, Lazio, Spurs and Slavia Prague. Now, Lazio aren't very good. Slavia Prague aren't very good. Rangers are awful. Ajax are a shambles. You're down to 5 already. So that's 5. Those are the 5 teams who can win that competition. You go and try and win the damn thing. You don't have to. You don't have to come top of the group, top of the league, because you only get 6 bonus points for it. If you win, as long as you're in, I think in the top 8, then you get that 2-week rest in February. If you come 9th, okay, you play those 2 games. And you're top seed and you play the team that's 24th and you beat them anyhow because they're rubbish. So you'll be all right. As long as you're in the top 16, you're actually quite well placed. Top 8 gives you a break. Top 16 gives you top 12 gives you an easy tie. So, okay, that's fine. But you take it seriously. You win your 4 home games, you're through. You can then think about when it comes to January and you've got a tough game the following Sunday, and it doesn't matter because you've already qualified, then you can think about tossing the away game off, whoever the last away game is. You don't have to be silly about it. But what you do have to do is take it seriously to start with. When you're playing Carabao and Elfsborg in your first 2 matches, you win those 2 games, you're virtually qualified by the end of September.
Yeah.
Because you've got 6 points in the bag. So you win that, you take it seriously. That doesn't mean playing the first 11. Because every team's got a first 11, but you choose from your first 15, first 16, play them, make sure you win the games. And if you're 4-0 up, 3-0 up, 2-0 up, then give them a rest after 25 minutes, over 25 minutes to go. You don't have to play the full 90. That's when you use your squad. But
Absolutely.
I think he knows that. I think he'll do that. And he recognises that if Spurs are going to win a trophy this season, there's 3 realistic trophies they can win. Because the Premier League isn't one of them. They could finish in the top 4. I think they should finish in the top 4, certainly in the top 5. But they're more likely to win one of the other 3 cups. Now there's more games to play in Europe, but look at the teams they're playing. They should be winning them easily. A lot of those games. So, but if the mentality is right, but Jason is right. Those afternoon kickoffs away from home in Europe have been a shambles upon shambles upon shambles for 5 years. Look at the teams we've lost to and drawn against. Absolute rubbish performances. When we play the night games, we tend to be all right. When we play at home, we tend to be all right. But the early kickoff afternoon games were a bloody mess. Attitudes stunk the place out. And that's not acceptable. And that's under 5 different managers.
Yeah. I think that is very much the key, as Martin touches upon there, the attitude. And Jace, you've mentioned that a lot about the way in which Spurs will approach this competition. I just wonder for you on that basis, we look at the fact now that he's got more than just an 11 there. Has he got, in your opinion, the freedom and flexibility to be able to actually have a genuine, decent 11 goes out in Europe that can still then, and amongst that, still compete in the Premier League on a Sunday? It goes back to my question at the very, very start of this. Does he have the numbers there to do that, in your opinion? Can he find a decent enough squad, in your opinion?
Well, like I said, he's definitely got enough numbers to finish in the top 8 and definitely in the top 24. And there's a January transfer window before you play the knockout rounds. And, I'm sure he'd like to add 1 or 2 in January, or certainly 1 if he can. We brought Dragos in last year, didn't we? And in the January, we brought Bentancur and Kulusevski in a January window. So it's not to say that we won't make an addition or 2 in January when the knockout rounds come around. I think, it's just that, as Martin says, you look at those teams and you're not scared, but if you can't beat Wolfsburg, Lask, Pacosta, Ferreira and Moura, then Lazio and Rangers and Ajax do look scary, but they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be, and you should have more than enough to get, like I say, to get into the top 8 games. And just on generally, not just Tottenham, the much is being made of the new formats, and particularly for the Champions League, it'll be a better competition and there's less dead rubbers and things like that. But I still think the big teams, your Man Cities, the Real Madrids and things like that, they'll still be sitting there with play 5-1-4, draw 1 or something, in which case they've still got 3 dead rubbers. I don't necessarily think that it'll make the big difference that it's been advertised to do. Yeah, you might get a game in match week 7 of, I don't know what the Champions League draw is, but maybe Liverpool are playing Dortmund or something. But if both teams are in top positions, then it's pretty much a dead rubber game then anyway, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
I don't think it will actually have the major difference. I still think that come the Christmas stage and you play the games 7 and 8 after Christmas, that a lot of those games after Christmas will be pretty much positions done.
It'll be determining who goes into
position
which
9 and 20.
Yeah.
Teams that are in the bottom half will think, well, we should be in the 24, but we're not going to quite reach the top 8, in which case it's a rotation drab game for even some of the teams down in the mid to bottom end. So we'll see. They've tried to do something with the competitions. It remains, I'm yet to be convinced it will be a better stage than the group stages were.
Yeah, I do agree. Listen, what we are going to do, we are going to squeeze
in general, that is, not for Tottenham, for all of them.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. What we are going to do, we are going to squeeze in our next break of the show here for our listeners on audio. We've got nearly over 3,000 of you watching us live as always. We can't thank you enough for your support for Last Word on Spurs. And I do just want to turn our attention, if I can, back towards the Premier League. It is a big, big week, of course, for Spurs coming up. They've got Arsenal to come less than a week from now. How's your nerves? How are they going? And I think when we talk about nerves and how they are right now, I think, many that can't veer away from, look, I'm a stats man. I think, what very much I'm about the eye test, but I'm also about what we see out there in terms of the form and in terms of the results, which will bring an interesting next topic that I want to bring to your attention, Martin, if you don't know already, which I'm sure you maybe do, in terms of Spurs' current form at the moment, which at the present moment in time, Spurs have taken 15 points from our last 13 Premier League games. They've actually only won the last 13 league games out of the last 31, which goes back from, if you go from Chelsea in that 4-1 defeat of last season, you take it all the way back to there. Now, 10 of those wins that came for Spurs were against teams below 10th in the table. They've only beaten one top 10 side since the 10th of December 2023, and that was Aston Villa by 4-0 at the time. And if you look at a smaller pool, Spurs have only won just 5 of the last 14 league games. All 5 wins were against, you'd say, the so-called bottom 5 sides at the time. Everton, Sheffield United, Burnley, Notts Forest, Luton. In addition to this, many teams are often judged by their away form. We've had a discussion a lot on Last One on Spurs. Jason discussed the European away form there. But the domestic form alone, when you look at Spurs' domestic form, they have lost 4 of their last 6 away Premier League games. And you look back, they won 1, drawn 1 more than the first 15 on the road under Ange combined, which was 1-6 drawn, 6 lost 3. And again, including the only 3 wins away from home in their last 15 away fixtures, to keeping only 4 clean sheets in the last 32. So if you look at maybe the opening, or without the opening 10-game honeymoon period from the former last season, Spurs would have actually been finished around 10th, 11th. So I'm just intrigued to know from you, is this normal for a manager that's in his transition into his second season? Or is there a cause for concern when I read you out some of those stats for you there, Martin?
I think it's fair to say that they don't look great. But then if you look at that period between mid-December and start of April, it looks pretty good. You know, you can always take sub-samples to make your point. When they went to Villa and won 4-0, you thought they were going to come fourth easily, didn't you? Because they played them off the park. And then the next week, they didn't turn up at Fulham. And that was a real frustration because they were in a great position, and it all sort of dissipated after that, and not enough consistency of performances. I think they finished where they should have finished last season. Although I also think that if Richarlison had stayed fit for 10 more games, they'd have finished fourth, because he was scoring 2 in every 3 games, but he only played 18 games. And if he'd stay fit for 10 more games, he scores 4 or 5 more goals, and that's probably enough to finish top 4. There's a bigger squad now. I think there is a genuinely bigger squad of players you can trust to play, which is an important thing. I think if we lose Van der Ven, it's devastating, but it's not fatal. Last season, it felt fatal. You couldn't, I didn't feel we could defend without him in the team. At least we have an option now in Dragusin, who I think does okay. But yeah, we've got to be realistic. We're behind 3 teams without question before we start the season. So if there's only 4 Champions League spaces, we've got to beat 15 other teams to get that one spot. And basically, we've got to beat 4 other teams to get that one spot. Villa, United, Chelsea, Brighton, I think, but maybe, Newcastle you could throw in there as well. So Are we good enough to do that? Yes. Will we do it? Well, we'll see. But we're nowhere near City, Arsenal and Liverpool. And let's not try and pretend we are. In any individual match, we could beat them, as we did last season. We drew at Arsenal, we drew at City, we beat Liverpool at home. And then we're average at best in the other 3. The Liverpool away game, we got back into it. We didn't deserve to. We were shambolic for 45 minutes. City at home, actually, we could have got a 1-1 draw, but for the greater good, we didn't. And then Arsenal at home, we probably were the better team in many ways, but they were far more clinical. They took their chances. They took advantage of our limitations. We cannot make those defensive mistakes on Sunday because they will win. If we are soft at corners, they will score. It's simple, really, isn't it? They're a more efficient team than we are. So we have to play better. And we have to be efficient. We have to have a centre forward who, when that ball gets rolled across the box, the centre forward gets in there. Now, they're not unstoppable. They're playing without Rice. Looks like Calafiore is injured, so he may well not be available to be an option for them. But they've got Timber, who's a good player, come in, who missed all of last season. They're solid at the back. They're a good team. We're going to have to play extremely well to beat them. I quite like the fact we're playing them at home first rather than away. We haven't done that for quite a while. So there's something in that. We can maybe turn it around, just get a result. I think if Spurs were to go out and play well and win, it would change everyone's mindset straight away. So if we play well and end up drawing 2-2, people would be quite. Like we went to their place last season, were marginally the better team of 2 in a 2-2 draw.
Yep.
But everyone was upbeat about it. We didn't win. We just played well. Yeah. If you play well and don't lose, it does give you a bit more bounce, doesn't it? If you play poorly and lose, everything looks miserable. Yep. I don't think it is miserable, but it's a big game, and they've got to turn up. They've got to. Too many times over the last few years, particularly away from home, but often at home, the big games, they haven't turned up. We've all seen it. We've all gone there, and we've known after 20 minutes they're going to lose. We've known they're going to lose because they've just not been right. They've turned up. They haven't. The fans have turned up. The bus has turned up, and no one got off it. They might as well have stayed at home.
That's so true. On the point of form, Jason, look, again, I think I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on it because the stats don't lie. And I think I said in the last show that for me, I do look at away form being a real key of success for a team. I know you can maybe argue there's a point Man United actually under Ten Hag. I think they went unbeaten in quite a long run, so that maybe defeats what I'm trying to get to here. But when you look at Spurs' away form, I'll go back to Nottingham Forest of Ange last season. Of course, that unbelievable start Spurs had. The away form dating back to 28th of December. Spurs have played 12, won 2, drawn 4, lost 6, only 2 clean sheets, and they have conceded at least 2 goals per game in at least 8 of those fixtures. I just wonder for you, at what point, Jace, do you get concerned that the noise does become louder and louder? I think we all are of understanding and admitting here that the manager needs more than just 12, 18 months to get given a chance to turn this around. But when does that become a concern more glaringly, that noise does get louder with regards to the form? And is it, again, to put Martin's point back on there, how important the Arsenal game is, just to assure everybody with a performance that we are still on the right track? We're playing against a very good Arsenal side, a side that have been in the title race for the last couple of seasons. Where are you in terms of the form in general, Jason? Is it a concern for you personally?
Well, the noise comes from yourself. Putting stats like that up there, you're creating the noise.
Well,
You know,
I mean,
the more people create the noise comes, doesn't it? I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't want to settle for anything. So you say we've lost 4 of the last 6 away games. That's Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle. What's our away record like at Stamford Bridge for the past 30 years? What's our away record like at Liverpool for the past 120 years? Bill Nick never won a game at Liverpool. So, you know, there's in Chelsea away, they won once in the Premier League or twice. You know, Arsenal, we've won twice in the Premier League, once when it was 2 days before a cup final. So one of those isn't really the thing. It's only Eunice Cabal's header in 30 years at the Emirates or something. So you can look at it like that. The 4 games before that, Villa, Man United, West Ham, Everton, we went unbeaten. So there's, you know, was it a bad win at Villa? Is Man United away a bad point? Is West Ham away for Tottenham a bad point? Of course you want to win those games. I'm not suggesting you don't want to win them and you just settle for a point. But as individual results, they're not horrendous results. I think what was worrying with some of those away games is the level of performance. You know, Chelsea, we were horrendous. Liverpool 4-0 down in 60 minutes. Newcastle lose it 4-0 or 4-1 last year? I can't remember. So it's the level of performance as opposed to the result. But, you know, the weekend's a home game. Then it's followed by Brentford at home. So, you know, don't worry about the away form yet. Let's get 6 points in the next 2 home games. And Martin's right. Everyone's mentality is different. And, you know, you look at the Arsenal game. I mean, it's natural, I think. Spurs fans dread it. And actually, do you know what? The 2 or 3 Arsenal people I know, because I don't have Arsenal mates, I just refuse to have them. But a couple that I know, they're also dreading it because they know they're expected to win it, and it's the derby, and you just think, Jesus, and you get that horrible pit in your stomach. But you know, they went to Villa, and they could have easily lost at Villa. They didn't. They, you know, two horrendous misses by Ollie Watkins, and you know, the save by Raya is brilliant, but he should never even be able to make the save. Ollie Watkins should score both of those chances. They're 2-0, and you know, nobody's really talking about them. Then they drop points to Brighton. So, you know, they're not in rampant form themselves. It's not like they've stormed with 3-4-0 wins, is it? And as Martin says, there's a couple of players missing. So there's an opportunity for Tottenham not to be scared of them. And I mean, the strange thing is last year of the game, the frustration last year was, even though we were 3-0 down, it was 2 ridiculous goals, 2 set pieces. It wasn't the football that I feared Arsenal would make, that they'd have 4 or 5 clear 1-on-1 chances and we'd be 4-0 down at half time with that type of game. And I think they've only conceded 3 away goals in 2024, 2 of which are to Tottenham. And Mickey van der Ven had the one disallowed by 2 millimetres or 3, or that controversial offside decision. So, you know, we know we can score against them. Arteta was actually quite complimentary of Tottenham. He said, no, they really got to us that day. They did do things that we didn't expect. So the opportunity's there, as you say, get the performance. But it's the one game where just a performance isn't enough, is it? You got to get a performance and a result, or at least not lose it.
Yeah.
But I think if you can go ahead and win the game, it makes such a big difference. But I mean, you're not bothered about it because you've told me Coventry's the biggest game of our season. So I presume you're resting 8 players for, you don't want Solanke or Madison or Vicario because you're concentrating on Coventry and on the Wednesday. That's your big
what?
game.
It's ironic, Jason. I mean, if you ask me what the bigger game is out of the two in the context of what Spurs' season is, as much as I despise Arsenal in footballing terms, I personally do feel for me, and again, it's just my personal thing, I feel for me the Coventry game is the bigger game for us because of the nature of what that could bring us in terms of a trophy. I think with no disrespect, look, I want to beat Arsenal. Of course I want to beat Arsenal. I want to finish above Arsenal. Do I think that's realistic at the moment? Unfortunately, I don't. I look at the difference in the two squads and, I'll ask you that, Martin. You look at the two games Spurs got coming up, Arsenal and Coventry, for different reasons. There'll be fans that feel Spurs need a cup run. They need to win a cup. Can you understand for fans that may feel Coventry is maybe not bigger, but just as big as the Arsenal game, given the nature of the way Spurs went out the cup last season?
I think mentality-wise, you need to see against Coventry the right attitude. And that's not always been the case. Nottingham Forest and Middlesbrough and Sheffield United and all of these Colchesters, these games where they've just had a terrible attitude in the cup competitions, that they've not taken them seriously. That's the players. It's under different managers. It isn't a manager's fault. That's a number of managers where the attitude has been just appalling. So, yeah, they need to go out and play at Coventry. Go out and you can play brilliantly and lose. You can batter a team rigid and hit the bar 5 times and not win. But if you play all right, that's different. It's when you don't show up that the frustration comes. Now, the players know they have to turn up on Sunday, but they also need to know that they have to turn up on Wednesday, and then the following Saturday, and then the following Thursday when we play. All of these games, they've got to turn up because you can't afford to be off it, or you lose, or you won't play well enough, or you might get away with playing Carabao and not for 75%, but not too many games this season. You can't play Nottingham Forest at 75%.
No,
you can't play Brighton at 75%. You can't play, even if they haven't scored a point yet, Southampton at 75%, because you end up drawing or losing. Because it's that tough. You've got to be at it every game. And that isn't always 100% performance, but it's 100% commitment that's required.
Yeah.
Coventry showed last year, didn't they, with the Man United Cup tie and then winning at Wolves. Weren't they 2-1 down at Wolves with a few minutes left?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been laughing at me, Jace, all week about this. And this is what I've been saying to you at Coventry. That's not going to be an easy game on a Wednesday night. They're going to be, right up for this game, Coventry. This is what I was saying to you. Right up for it.
No, I've been laughing at you because you're in panic stations about Coventry. And I'm saying if you're going to win the competition,
you
have to get past Coventry away. I mean,
of course,
you're worried about Coventry in the competition, what are you going to do when you play Man City and Arsenal and Chelsea and things? So that's what I mean. I don't expect us to just go to Coventry and it's Coventry, we go and win because we've come unstuck with that attitude.
Well, this is what I mean.
Martin's right, you've got to go there properly for sure.
Yeah. How do you feel balanced at this week, Jace? Do you think he's confident he'll get that? Do you think he'll get that balance right? Arsenal and Coventry, will he get that balance right for you? What do you feel? Because I know for fans, this is the thing with Arsenal, like we all say, we maybe expect a performance. We can't guarantee a result. They're a good side. Yes, they've got injuries, don't get me wrong, but it feels like a big week for the football club, a big week for the fan base, just to keep everybody. I'm not saying everyone's going to lose their minds and they want to get rid of Ange. I don't think we're there or anywhere near that yet. But I feel for the week in what's coming for the football club, it's a big week. Is that fair, Jason, for me to say that?
I think there's enough voices that want rid of Ange. I think it's, maybe in the general Martin slightly different because he's a Spurs fan, but I think there's an underestimation in the media of the dissenting voices. There's plenty out there for sure. I think it depends on Sunday's result, doesn't it? If Sunday was to go really badly, then what does that take into Coventry? Does that say, right, you owe the supporters a performance at Coventry? We cannot go out the cup to Coventry. So I think one kind of fixture filters into the next one. We just need to see what type of team he goes with, and it's guesswork at the moment, Rick. Hopefully we go to Coventry.
Yeah.
I think more probably the question for you is what's bigger? Is it the Coventry Cup tie or is it Brentford at home the weekend after Coventry? there's no bigger game than the Arsenal game, but it's do you risk enough players where the Brentford game is a problem to you? So
Absolutely, we do.
I want us to go
That's
and win
just
the
my
next
view.
two games. I
That's
want
just
us to
my
win
view.
the next two games.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you want to be. You got to go. You got the aim's got to be to win every game.
Of
You
course
don't.
it
You
is.
can't. You
Yeah, of
can't
course.
decide. Oh, this game's more. No, every game is equally important. Unless it's a dead rubber when you've won the first 6 games in the European, or you're 5 up from the first leg in a 2-legged game.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah,
game is as important as the next one.
Can
No
you
game is less important.
Yeah.
Because if
Can
you
you-
think like that, there aren't any important games because it doesn't matter because you've lost too many games before in the season. Every game's got to matter. If it doesn't, you're nothing as a team.
Yeah, I think the great opportunity, Martin, if you agree, is that these next couple of games gives us an opportunity to build some real momentum. Would you agree on that, Martin? Arsenal at home, Coventry away, win those games going into Brentford, like you say. We've got a real opportunity to gain some momentum in the season. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the games between this international break and the next one,
Yeah,
will determine the mindset of everyone probably for the rest of the season. If we have a run of 5 games where we win 4 and draw 1 and play really well, everything's upbeat, everything's positive. We go into the next international break thinking this is great. If we play poorly and lose matches, then people are going to start grumpy. They're going to start asking questions. They're going to start getting antagonistic because it's natural. It's human nature. So there's a requirement for them to go out and play. You can't guarantee anything,
no.
but you should be able to guarantee the attitude. That's what I expect from that team. I don't expect them to win every week because it's football. But if they play like they played against Newcastle, they'll win games.
Absolutely.
Because they played really well. It's the control of the matches has been much better this season. It hasn't been as frantic as last season. I think it's been a step up in terms of the way they're playing from last year. The results haven't been as good at the start as last season. It's only 3 points difference.
Yeah. I think the only thing for me, Martin,
the performances have been much better.
I'm intrigued to what your thoughts on, Martin. The only thing for me that I still have concerns about is that when the going gets tough, are some of these players there for that? And I look at the likes of Basuma, I look at the likes of Bentancur, and I look at even like the likes of Bergvall, Gray when they're going to come in. You know, as I said, you know, in these the previous games that I said, there were going to be times against Newcastle where you were going to have to really grit your teeth, grind through it, and find a way to come out. And to be fair, there was a reaction after Spurs went 1-0 down. They did equalise. Yes, of course, they lost the goal late on to Isak at the time. Do you feel that emotionally Spurs have got enough players there and maturity to handle these big games coming up? Arsenal away, Coventry away. Have they got enough of those players for you to get through that from what you see at this squad at the moment?
Well, they should have, yeah. But you don't know that until the stress is on, isn't it? I should be able to get through every day at work. I can't guarantee I will. You know, it's like we're all the same, aren't we? Until you know, until you're under that pressure, you can't be certain. You look at the squad and you think that they should be able to cope with it. But should be able to and being able to
two different
are
things.
2 entirely divergent beasts, aren't they? Because you don't know whether but under pressure, you need your big players to step up. You need your centre half not to fall asleep. You need your captain to really show for the ball. You need your ball playing midfielders to thread those passes. You need your keeper to be strong. All of those things. It's on the players. It's not on anybody else. It's not on the fans. It's not on on the manager. Are the players strong enough between their ears? And only they know that answer.
That's fair. I mean, that's really fair on that point. I mean, Jace, like I say, we're looking ahead, of course, to what we've got to come for Spurs. One of the things that we are going to know very clearly is around set pieces and around how Spurs are going to deal with them. And I think, to be fair, to give them their credit, I think there has been definitely an improvement this season from what I've seen so far in set pieces. And that goes down to the work that's been done behind the scenes by Spurs' assistant coach in Nick Montgomery, who, to be fair, is taking on a lot more of a hands-on approach from set pieces. I think you've got to say that we look a lot more organised, and that's both, I think, in defending and attacking set pieces. Of course, Romero got the one against Everton for us. before the international break. They're going with more of a hybrid zonal and man marking system with the weaker players in the air marking opposition midfielders rather than the big defenders and the attackers. I know what you're going to say, Jace. I want to ask you, how confident are you that we've got this down to a T? You're going to tell me, wait for the next 7 days, aren't you?
Of course you are, because Arsenal are the set piece specialists, aren't they? They scored,
Yeah.
20 odd goals from them. They scored 2 against us last year. It's. I think Dragozin made a difference at Newcastle. He also made a difference with set pieces at Sheffield on the last day of last season. Will Solanke play? In which case he's on that near post area. That will help. But for me, be it zonal, be it man marking, whatever, a lot of it is Vicario has to boss the situation. I think in the Everton game there was the one corner that caused us all sorts of problems, where I think Maddison ended up clearing it off the line. Vicario had literally nobody in front of him, and it was a ball that he could have come for and chose not to.
Yeah.
And if your keeper don't want to come and try and alleviate the pressure or flaps at it, it's a bit difficult. We know in Arsenal, Ben White's going to stand in front of him. And Newcastle didn't really pressure Vicario too much, which surprised me, with people like Dan Burns and things like that. They didn't actually really pressure him, but Arsenal will. And then has he got the strength and maturity and desire to sort that out? And if other players see he's being messed around with, does somebody go and sort that out for him and take that on board, or do they just do what they've been told to do on the iPad and say, look, sometimes for me, players, you can give them all the instructions on the iPads, but they're intelligent people. They should have enough football intelligence to say, I know I've been told this all week, but every corner's given us nightmares. I can't just do what I've been told to do and take a little bit of responsibility on. And it's whether we got the people that want to do that. That's part of it.
There's one thing that strikes me with corners. If you've got someone who's doing what Ben White does to the goalkeeper, or what the Everton fella did to the goalkeeper, don't stand on the post. Leave the post, because as soon as the ball is touched on, that player's offside because he's interfering with the goalkeeper. It won't be a goal because he can't see it because he's standing next to him. So you take the gamble sometimes, and then after that, they won't do it as much because they're going to be offside. So then you can go back on the post. Just be a bit smarter.
Yeah, I agree on that point. I think it goes back to what Jason says as well. I need to see Vicario a lot more dominant of that 6-yard box.
He's been better, I think. I thought he was stronger against Newcastle. And they protect him a little bit. The referees are protecting goalkeepers anyhow more this season. Definitely.
Yep.
So that helps. Let's see whether they continue doing it or not.
Amen. Listen, guys, before we close, it is a big week in store. We'll get Jason come back in there. Go on, Jason, for us very quickly.
Yeah, I think the one thing from the Arsenal game, if my memory was right last year, Romero had 3 or 4 headers, didn't he?
Did.
We actually could have scored from a few set pieces ourselves.
Yeah, we had a few opportunities. They did have a few opportunities.
He had a few. Did he score one of the goals for us? I know Sonny got the penalty. I can't remember what the other goal was.
He did get one, but it was a bit of a misclearance, wasn't it?
Kick for,
that's right, and he drove it in. But I think he had one header that hit the post, didn't he? And he had another one that flashed wide by millimetres or something. So, we did actually give them a few problems from set pieces last year.
We did. I mean, again, this will be the intrigue for Spurs. I feel a lot of it, Mark, if you agree, it will come down to the fitness of Dominic Solanke, of course, which will be a massive, massive plus for Spurs going into the game. And obviously, we'll know about that later in the week when Ange does hold that presser. We're going to hopefully hear some news around as well. Of course, Mickey van der Ven, hopefully he won't be far away. I mean, Ange did say before the international break for Newcastle that he just missed the game. Maybe, like I say, it would have been a couple of days later, would have been fit, but it feels a lot of it is riding on Solanke. How important are those two players for you in terms of this Arsenal game coming up? Do they both have to play for you to be going into that game ultra positive?
I think if they both play, you'd be more confident about the result. I mean, Van der Ven's pace is a huge asset, without question. And also, everyone knows that they can't outrun him. So they don't try and outrun him because they can't outrun him. So they won't. So therefore, a fit Van der Ven means that Saka's not as effective because he's less able to. You want Udoka to be really tight on him, And then even if he gets past him, you've got Van der Ven to get past, who covers across. So you're suddenly stronger. If you've got a centre forward who's actually a box threat, who can score goals, then you can play the ball into him. You can play off him as well. You can't play off Sonny because it's not his job. He's not a centre forward. He's filling in. He scores goals against Arsenal, against anyone, when he's got chance to run at them from the left because he's got a bit of space to play in as well. So they're a better. No, if your best centre half and your best centre forward are fit, you've got a better chance of winning, haven't you? I mean, it's not difficult to work out. I mean, if your best players are on the pitch, you're going to have a better chance. Their best midfield player, best defensive midfield player, isn't on the pitch. That's the benefit for us.
Absolutely.
Rice can't play.
Yep.
Who knows? No one knows at this stage who's going to be fit after the international break.
Yep.
There could be loads of injuries. It's always they call it the FIFA disease, don't they? In Spain, anything can happen. You could end up, Vicario could get knocked out, cold, coming on for 30 seconds in the last minute of the match. You just don't know. The great thing about it, we're not going to get anyone injured on England duty because we ain't got anyone in the squad. But other than that, anything's possible.
To close it, Martin, big week coming up or big month? You said earlier for you, it's crucial big month. Big month.
The gap between this break and the next break sets the tone for the entire season, I think.
Fascinating stuff. Jace, do you go along with that for you? Would you go along with Martin, big month rather than big week? How do you see it for you?
Every month is a big month, mate. If you win all those 4 games, it's a big month to keep your form going. If you lose all 4 games, it's a big month to avoid relegation. There's never a month that isn't big, is there? But I do think now that international break's out of the way, transfer window's done. Now we know where players are. So I think the next 4 games. It's not an easy run.
No.
Arsenal, Man United, Brighton, Brentford. So the 2 home games, and then your away form that you make lots of noise about and worry about the noise that's being made about it. Then it'll get noisy for you when it's Man United and Brighton away. But it's get the next week out of the way, get that Arsenal game done, and it's just big for momentum, isn't it? If you can get a result and a performance, but definitely a result from that, it gives you a huge lift. Win at Coventry, everything feels rosy. Yeah. So that's the way you've got to approach it.
I totally agree. Jace, can't thank you enough. Appreciate it as always. We'll see you after Coventry, where hopefully I'm smiling, and so are you. I'm not crying on your shoulder.
If we lose, I'm not coming on.
Look at that pressure.
I had enough of you with Forest. What was it, last year or the year before?
I was. Forest.
Well.
I was in bits against Forest.
I went on Amazon and ordered a noose the next day. That's how down I was.
I think my season was done after Forest, and that was crushing out in October.
Dear,
it was bad. Martin, to close with you, big week. We said about big month coming up for Spurs. This is going to be a big week in terms of mentality, isn't it? Like you touched upon there. This could really, I think, lay down a marker that if we show the right mentality and come through the next week, I think all Spurs fans will be not just relieved, but really hopeful about the season ahead. Is that fair?
Yes, I think that's it. Show the onus is now on the players. I think it said the performance has been far better than results so far, but that only takes you a certain point. There comes a point where you need to get results as well. This is when you start needing to get results as well. You need to play well. You need to get results. You need to start looking like the football team that you want to be. You need to be able to rotate enough to keep players fresh, but not too much that you disrupt the team. It's got to be some continuity. There's got to be some consistency. There's got to be some results. There's got to be an accumulation of all of that to keep people happy. Because at the moment, I'm not saying the jury's out. It's not that. A lot of people, the vast majority of punters, I think, are pretty happy about the basic direction. There's always going to be, even if you win in every game, people moan. But there's a bit of, is it the right option? No, let's calm down. But we need, over the next 6-7 matches, to see that there's a real sense of direction on the pitch and off it. That the players do know what their roles are. That this team can control football matches and hurt teams and not make sloppy mistakes. Be a real team. Because there should be a squad there that's a real squad. Let's have a look. Let's find out.
Absolutely. Martin, there's always lovely words of you come on here. We can't thank you enough. We really, really do. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Martin, for those that want to find the work you still do, you're still working away, I believe. Where can
I
they
like to
find what you
think
do?
so. I'm still employed at the moment, still at the Sun, still doing my stuff, still trying to keep myself employed, still trying to pay the mortgage. That's all I need to do.
Love that. We can't thank you enough. As always, we look forward to catching up with you probably towards the end of January. February was get you back on for a bit of a review as where we're at. So we can't thank you enough. Jason, thank you as always. And I'm sure Jay will say again, just to reiterate the point Martin says there, it is about mentality more than anything, isn't it? It's about showing that we are ready for what comes our way.
Absolutely, it is, and he needs to, because West Ham twice, Chelsea twice, Arsenal twice. Last year we didn't win any, and it's a long time since we beat one of the big boys. Liverpool at home was the last big win, and it was 9 men, and it was an own goal. So I think he needs a result against one of the big boys, and he needs to win one of these big London derbies to shut a few of the dissenting voices up. And fingers crossed he does that at the weekend.
Oh, man. Can't thank you enough there, Jason. We can't. Listen, thank you so much to Martin, to Jason. We've gone with a level-headed panel this evening. We really have. Like I say, we are building up to Arsenal to come this week on Last Word on Spurs. From myself, from Jason, from the wonderful Martin Lipton, we've been the Last Word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well, and as always,